Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, listen, we're going to have a great show today. We're going to tell a story about an interesting link that exists between someone here in Mississippi and the Queen. You know, with the Queen's 7 days leading up to her funeral. It's really a dynamic time. And as you probably have already read by now, it was the most viewed event in history. Unbelievable number of people paid attention to that because, you know, at the end of the day, the Queen touched a lot of people. But we're going to come back to that in just a second. I want to share with you, you know, one of the things that in my conversations with entrepreneurs and CEOs and even people who work in the community, there is always a bit of a dogged determination. You know, you've heard us talk about this before, kind of fake it till you make it. But this thought that you got to be willing to take risk and step out there and be willing to do things you've never done before. And that's the way you get better. That's the way you sharpen your saw and improve your skills, and you're able to ultimately, you know, make a bigger contribution in your company or in the community. I ran across this the other day. It was a note about in 1973, Billie Jean King. You remember her? She beat Bobby Riggs in what was called the Battle of the Sexes tennis match back in those days. And she said something that was kind of, I think, applicable to what we're talking about now. She said that champions keep playing until they get it right. I love that. I mean, you don't always get it right the first time. In fact, you know, every professional athlete will tell you it takes a lot of work. Frank Willem, who's been on my show before, he's a tremendous entrepreneur, had a lot of success, and he posted this the other day. He said, the quickest way to succeed is to start now and figure it out as you go. You can't learn to drive in a parked car. I thought that was perfect, actually. You can't learn to drive in a parked car. Same thing goes for yourself and the goals that you may have set for your stake. And then my friend Susan Myers-Griggs, one of the more positive people I know, she posted this from Paulo Coelho. And here's what he said. A mistake repeated more than once is a choice. And I guess the point here is that you just got to learn from your mistakes. That is for sure. I said that we're going to talk about a connection that exists with the Queen. And I wanted to start with this to share with you that if you go back and look at the Queen's relationships with U.S. presidents, it's a fascinating history, actually. As Queen, she actually met with 13 different presidents, but when before she became Queen, she actually met with President Truman along the way. But you can go and look and see that the first president she met with was President Kennedy. After she was Queen, of course. And then more recently, she met with President Biden. And you can go back and read this incredible story of, you know, meeting with President Eisenhower and the relationship which she did have with President Kennedy and with Nixon, and it just goes on and on. But you think about it, if you go back and look, you see pictures of her dancing with President Ford, and you know, these just terrific opportunities to continue to meet, you know, on the world leader stage with some of the most important presidents in our history. And, you know, there's this great photo, incidentally, of President Reagan and the Queen on horseback. They used to love to ride horseback together and ride. But you think about the amazing history that she was involved with. You know, I can only imagine what it takes to have a president meet with the Queen, because just from the Queen's point of view, what you saw in the 7 days leading up to her funeral, there's a lot of formalities. They don't leave a stone unturned when their head of state comes to town. And I personally had the opportunity to actually work once on the White House advance team when Vice President George W. Bush came down here. George H.W. Bush came to coastal Mississippi and got a chance to meet him and his wife, and what a wonderful man he was, incidentally. But to be able to see from behind the scenes the enormous amount of details that these guys focus on when the president comes to town. Imagine what that's like when you meet with the Queen. And I want to share with you one particular picture that will connect the conversation today. And Cal, if you put it up for the Facebook audience and the YouTube audience. But what this is the Queen and her husband and George Bush and his wife, the First Lady, and they're kind of laughing together, and it's an important moment in history. And we have someone here in Mississippi, someone who's been on the show several times, and we've told a little bit about his history. I want to invite my friend Craig Ray to the conversation, who is the executive director for Visit Mississippi. And you may remember that when we talked the first time, when we told his story, he spent some time as a special assistant for President Bush, and that actually, put him in a position to travel at times with the president. And in one particular case, they had the opportunity to plan a meeting between the president and the Queen, and he was actually there in that moment. So it's going to be a fascinating story, and it's a good story that gives you a sense of what has to go on behind the scenes to make a single moment, that photo I just shared, happen. Anyway, Craig, how you doing, my friend?
Ricky, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Looking forward to talking about cruising the coast today and the passing of the Queen and some stories that we have and experiences meeting this special lady. And so I'm glad to be on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. Yeah, Cruising the Coast is coming up, and we've got an hour together, so we get a chance to really focus on how important. Excuse me? Yes, you got it, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And we've got a show planned with Woody Bailey as well, so we're really looking forward to bringing attention back to Cruising the Coast, what this incredible event is for not just coastal Mississippi, from Mississippi, with people coming from literally all over the world to attend it, and look forward to chatting with you about it. Hey, before we get into all the details that you were involved with around the meeting between the Queen and President Bush, let's remind people sort of what your role was in the White House, because you had this tremendous opportunity that gave you an insider's look at so much of history. So remind people what that role was.
Well, I served at the White House on two different occasions. I served with George Herbert Walker Bush from 1989 to 1993. And then I served for his son, George W. Bush, for 2001 to 2003, and then I came home to serve on, at that time, Haley Barbour's campaign for governor, and who became governor, and I stayed here in the role that I'm in. So at that time, the role that I served was special assistant to the president and deputy director for advanced and special events. So meaning we planned every step of his travel the time he left the White House, whether it was going to Camp David, going to Kennebunkport, going to Texas, going to Russia, going to Hawaii, wherever he was going. We not only planned his trip, but we worked with the Secret Service, the military, the press office, speechwriters. We were the go-to. Once the plan was like, we want to go here, y'all make it work from every detail, working with the local organization, whether it be, in your case, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the mayors and the representatives and the senators or the host committee, whoever it was, we were the point of contact for that. So it wasn't just one trip. In my role, we might have 15 trips going on at the same time. We might have 4 or 5 in the city of Washington, D.C., 3 or 4 domestic, and then might be an international trip going on at the same time. So it could be anywhere from 4, 5, 6 up to 15 trips going on, many of the same details that we would manage. And it's when you see that beautiful photo that you just showed, that took about 2 months of planning.
It's unbelievable. I mentioned that I had the opportunity to at least, it was just an opportunity. Someone asked, do you want to work with the White House advance team on this visit? I was at the Sun Herald at the time. I said, I'd love to go see, how it works.
Yeah.
And you met Bob Sawyer here in Coastal Mississippi was involved in lots of White House advanced team work for a long time, and we told his story. But it was so intricate from the moment they landed. I mean, everything was planned out. Of course, there's no margin for error, actually, when you've got the president or the vice president traveling. There's literally no margin for error. And you've got a team of professionals that are involved in lots and lots of advanced planning, don't you?
You sure do. And when you're planning a trip, if you're going to Gulfport, Mississippi, and he needs to be on the stage to give his remarks at 10 o'clock in the morning, well, then he needs to be at the airport at probably 9:15 to allow for a 15-minute motorcade to get there and get it and on the stage. But then he needs to depart at a certain time because he probably has 2 more events that day somewhere else and back in D.C. for meetings. So every minute counts. So you tell Air Force One we need to land at 9:13. They'll have the plane down and those wheels will be locked. But every minute adds up. So if you're late, then you're late to the next event, and then you miss something later. So every minute counts on just
that's exactly what I observed. And I can only imagine when the president is going to meet with the Queen, what in the world is involved with that. We're gonna tell that story when we come back. We'll see you with Craig Ray from Visit Mississippi after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend Craig Ray. C. Ray is how we know him. He's the executive director for Visit Mississippi, and we're going to talk about what's the latest at Visit Mississippi, and of course, Cruising the Coast coming up. They've got a huge role in that, and they support Woody Bailey so well over so many years. It's incredible how important that event has become, not just to Coastal Mississippi, but to Mississippi. But first, we're telling this fascinating story about the link between Craig Ray and a specific meeting that happened between President Bush and the Queen. And I thought it was interesting that we had that conversation to start out, Craig, so that people could get a sense of, under normal circumstances, when a president travels, there's an enormous lot of details to deal with, both from team in Washington, from the advanced team, the traveling team, and everything is down to the minute about where he's going to be and what he's going to be doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can't imagine what planning an overseas trip to meet with the Queen might be about. So why don't you kind of start with how that came about and what happens during the 2-month lead up to the actual meeting, the meetings that happen at the palace, et cetera. So take us through that.
Well, what you normally would do, what we did during the George W. Bush administration for scheduling, you have one main event that you're going to attend. In this case, it was the G8 summit in Genoa, Italy. And so that was our big target. We were going to that event. And of course, if you can imagine having 8 other countries and their presidents and their heads of state going to this small city in Italy, that was the main target, main logistic plan. But on the way, every president, I would say at least all of our U.S. presidents, when you're going somewhere like that for a big event, you want to make some other stops along the way, kind of make it worthwhile, whether it be 1 stop, 2 stops, so on and so forth. So one of the stops we chose to make on the way, again, you're looking at July 19th, 2001, the president was just elected. So this is before September 11th. And this is like 2 months after he's been inaugurated. And this is his first international trip. So he hasn't met the Queen. He hasn't really met anybody in this capacity so far at this point. So we scheduled a stop. First stop was going to be in the UK to London. And we were going to meet with Prime Minister Tony Blair. And we had requested an audience with the Queen. You do not go to London and meet with the Prime Minister and not request a meeting with the Queen and the Prince, whether it be, if it's an official state dinner or something, they would invite you. But if you're there, you would request an audience, whether it be coffee, tea, or lunch, something. So we had requested a lunch with the Queen, knowing we were meeting with the Prime Minister for more substantive meetings that afternoon and evening, and then the next day we moved on to Italy to the G8 summit. So with that, we start our planning, which is we go, 3 to 4 weeks before our main trip to do the pre-advance, as it's called. And you go to these countries and you go and you meet with the Prime Minister's office. In this case, you met with the Queen's team, which would be like, for all those fans of yours that are watching this show that watch The Crown on Netflix, just kind of insert this story into that, where you're meeting with the chief of protocol, the aide de camp, the lady in waiting. You're meeting with all the administrative people from Buckingham Palace, from the court security, which is equivalent to the Secret Service and the press. Everybody that you work with, that's who we were meeting with to plan this event, which was going to be about a 2-hour lunch and then a tour of Buckingham Palace for the president and first lady. So our first part of the role is to set that meeting up along with the prime minister's meeting, and then to look at some possible things that the president might want to do while he's there. We went to the Winston Churchill bunker, the famous bunker, World War II, where he actually managed the war. That was like 2 blocks from 10 Downey Street, and we looked at that as an opportunity that the president might want to visit there. We went to Chequers, which was their Camp David, which is where their prime ministers live and serve on the weekends. They have the option to live in town or stay out at Chequers. So we went there for the meeting for Tony Blair, and then we went to Buckingham Palace and met with all the staff, the team, and talked about the logistics. It'd be the equivalent of someone coming to the White House to meet with the president. Same type of logistics, but at a much accelerated level, as you can imagine. So it was quite the honor to just be there for the pre-advance and meet with all of our counterparts and go through the important details to stage a photo. And then really the lunch and the tour was more on them, not on us. We kind of, at that point, you release the leader, you release the president and first lady, and they go into their hands for this private lunch and dinner. But we staged everything else, the photo that you showed earlier. So, exhausting details to go to that moment, to who gets to come in, the number of press from their side, our side, the number of staff, the number of security, the number of vehicles that come through the gate, how long they will meet, what they will say, what type of gifts will be exchanged, what topics will be discussed, what will be served for lunch, what rooms would they like to see at Buckingham Palace, how long can they be there before they go to see the prime minister. All of those details, exhausting, the same details we would have if they came to the White House. But it was just an honor being there on the pre-advance, no expectations to meet the Queen or the Prince or any royal family. We were just doing work at the time, knowing during the visit, we would see the Queen, the Prince, members of the royal family that were there, and see all the pomp and circumstance, their military, the parade, the everything that comes into an official visit. So it was quite the planning, and for those that are in that industry, we appreciated logistics. We appreciated you. Would you like us here at 10:59? We will be here at 10:57. We will do what you want us to do as a good representative of the United States as your guest. So it was just fascinating, and watching what's taken place over the last couple of days for the funeral. The Queen was quite the detail person as well, and she had planned this funeral for 20 years. Everything you saw on TV, whether you watched it on CNN or any of the other networks, had been planned. Every minute, every movement of the vehicles that were chosen, who's sitting in which seats, what's going to be preached, said, talked about, everything was all planned. So everything that took place once she passed away had been planned.
Hey,
And,
Craig, before we get to the actual visit, I'm curious about in this planning meeting you guys had at Buckingham Palace, and you had the head of protocol and the lady in waiting and the aide de camp there and others, and then, of course, your team. Was there anything that surprised you about the way they conducted themselves or what they asked for, or because you'd been in your world as sort of a pre-planner, and now you're looking at the way they do it. Was there anything while you were doing it, you said, man, I'm fascinated by that? Was there any interesting kind of side stories to this?
a lot of respect. We respected, you're inside this very secure place of Buckingham Palace, a gated palace, and respecting their security, respecting what they wanted or what they expected from us. I think there's always this, what I saw traveling the world with the president was there's this intrigue of not only our president, but our security, our capabilities while we travel with security, whether it being the football, which is the mechanism to start a nuclear war if need be, but just the magnitude of our power that traveled with us from the United States. We brought Air Force One. We brought the United States of America with us to where we went. And I always sensed that power that everywhere that we went to. And I felt from our group, to include the members of the press that came with us at Travel on Air Force One, all of our staff, there was this true respect for the Queen and the monarch. I'm so fortunate to just be in that spot to meet the Queen and the Prince, to be there in that location. So there was just a lot of respect that I'm not saying I was looking for, but it just, we didn't have like a coaches meeting. So, all right, now here's how we need to feel, guys, Secret Service, military. It was just true when you came into that zone, when you were there, this feeling that we didn't know how we would feel, but it was just this true aura of respect and presence that the monarch has.
You feel the weight. All of you felt the weight of your joint responsibilities as this impending introduction was going to take place. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Craig Ray, and we'll hear about the specific moment he got to see the Queen. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. You may remember when Ashley Edwards and I visited together, we talked about a wide range of subjects, and one of the things we talked about was some connections that Mississippi had with the monarch and with the UK. And I mentioned, by the way, and we've got Craig Ray from Visit Mississippi with us, and he is telling this fascinating story about the advance work he did for President Bush, George W. Bush, to meet the Queen. And anyway, one of the things that I remember well, Craig, is that after Hurricane Katrina, when Andreas Dwani, the famed architect and planner who is the father of new urbanism, came to do these charrettes for the cities of coastal Mississippi, had 100 architects and planners from around the world. It was incredible, his ability to draw people in here. But included in the group were representatives from the Prince of Wales Foundation. And they were involved in community building. I thought it was so interesting that Andreas would have that connection, and that the Prince of Wales Foundation would be interested in coming to help us after Hurricane Katrina. But that was always an interesting connection to me. But their work around the world, a lot of debate. Some of it's good, not some of it's amazing. But at the end of the day, their work around the world, it goes way beyond the UK. And a lot of people have learned a lot about the monarchy, the good, the bad, and the ugly as it relates to the history there. And it's been a great opportunity for us to really kind of focus on the Mississippi connections. So when we went to break, Craig, we were talking about the advanced work you guys did starting like 2 months ahead of time, and then the visit at Buckingham Palace where you had the opportunity to meet with key people from the Queen's staff and really plan this really photo moment that we shared at the beginning of the show. Cal, you can pop the picture up again that we share. We're sharing this with the Facebook and YouTube audience of the president and First Lady with the Queen and the Prince. And great moment. My friend Craig Ray was there when that photo was taken. So all the work that led to that first introduction, and ironically, just a couple of months before September the 11th, everything would change so dramatically after September the 11th. You know, if the advanced work was on steroids before September the 11th, it was dang sure on steroids after September the 11th. And I got to see some of that, in fact, after Hurricane Katrina when the president came to visit coastal Mississippi. But so Craig, take us up to now. You've left the Buckingham Palace. You've got a plan. Now you got to execute the plan. Let's take us through that.
Well, once we arrived, as I shared at the break, you know, the moment where this all becomes real, because we're planning this summit at the G8, and you're dealing with all these other world leaders, and you've got so many other logistics and details that you're planning. And you know, was I even focusing on, gosh, I'm going to be able to meet the Queen, see the Queen, be in this moment. And until we had the motorcade, Air Force One lands, we come into London proper, and we're going to meet with the Queen, and we're going through the gates of Buckingham Palace that you see on the news. And you see, for those, again, that watch The Crown and see that moment where people, all the tourists are waiting outside the gate, and the gate opens to come in. So we're coming through the gate, and like, oh my gosh, this is real. We are going in to meet with the Queen and the Prince, with all of our team and all of our staff and all of our press, and everybody was just giddy. They were just in all the vehicles. Everybody was excited at like, we're here. We're going to meet with.
And I might even say, even the press, who are usually kind of wanting to be ultimately professional and all the time, and not letting themselves be known as being giddy about anything. Even the press was excited, weren't they?
They were excited, and they knew it wasn't a moment to throw out a question. Hey, Queen, what do you think about this? Hey, Mr. President, what do you think about that? It was an opportunity for them later, when they met with Tony Blair, the Prime Minister. There would be other substantive opportunities. This is a meeting, first time, with the President of the United States, First Lady, and the Queen and the Prince. So it was very gentleman. You know, everybody was just glad to be in Buckingham Palace in the foyer, and being there staged and waiting for. We had arrived. We brought in the press. They had them staged at this photo op area, about 15 feet away from where the Queen and the Prince would walk down the staircase in the foyer, and we would bring out the President and the First Lady in a true stage photo, which you see, which you shared earlier. And for that moment, it was this royal, I wouldn't say Disney moment, just a Hollywood moment where they
larger than life.
It
larger
was.
than life.
And at that point, I can just, as I'm telling the story, your heart flutters and your goosebumps. It was like, oh my gosh, this is like, we not only have we worked so long to plan this moment, but it's happening, and it's it's a good moment. It's a great moment. And so they take their pictures. All the press acted accordingly. They were just as excited you saw people. What was funny is they had their cameras and they're rolling everything, and then they pull out of their pocket their own personal cameras that they're taking photos. And this is probably before selfies, but everybody was, enjoying the moment. So it was special. And like you said, from that photo, you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, that was before September 11th. President Bush was elected as the education president, no child left behind. There wasn't a Hurricane Katrina yet. It was just this innocent, hardworking American that became president, was on his first trip to meet with world leaders and meet with the Queen. It was just this moment that none of us had any idea. Nobody did it. What was going to happen later?
So how did you feel when the Queen entered the room?
I would have to say, I don't know if my knees were knocking, but I was really just like, wow, this is. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was like when I saw the Rolling Stones in New Orleans, something other special event, 1982, when I was in college. But when you see somebody of this stature, that, or maybe it would have been like meeting Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
To me, I worked for the President of the United States, so I was used to that. But meeting the Queen and being there and seeing that moment, it was just something that I would never forget. It was very special. And all the plans worked out. Everybody.
Hey, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. It all came together. But that's why you plan. You got a lot of contingencies built in, and that's super exciting. Hey, one last question before we shift gears. Yeah. When the motorcade pulled up at the palace, what did it look like? Was there some formal thing going on outside?
For this, it was not an official state visit. The president came back to Buckingham Palace in 2003 in November for a state dinner, and he brought his father, George Herbert Walker Bush. They did a joint state dinner, and he actually stayed at Buckingham Palace for the night.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of that visit. Yeah.
And I think in record, he's one of 2 United States presidents only that have stayed at Buckingham Palace.
Yeah.
So that, what we did, planted the seed for a great visit, good friendship, good courtship to plan for this later, because his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, had a great relationship with the Queen as well. So that led to that invitation in November of 2003. But so when we arrived, there wasn't a whole lot of pomp and circumstance once we're inside the gates, other than, some military guard that was set up, and the gentleman with the furry black hats. I'm trying to remember their official title, the guards. But it wasn't a whole lot of like a band or anything more. It was a true small scale event, but all the streets leading into Buckingham Palace were blocked off for security reasons. And but once we were inside the gate, they were just a little bit of a show, but not a whole lot.
All these kind of like Forrest Gump moments, where you just find yourself. I had, let me tell you, I'll tell you my quick little Forrest Gump moments. When I was a kid, my dad brought me in 1969 after Hurricane Camille to the Gulfport Airport to see when President Nixon came here to give his speech after Hurricane Camille. And where we were standing, we couldn't see where he was. He came off the airplane and walked through this herd of people and to get to where he was headed. And my dad said, well, I can't get through. So he said, son, get down low and just go through there. And I did that. When I came up, I literally came up, Craig, and Nixon was standing right there, and I shook hands. Wow. I was just a kid. I didn't know at the time how important that was. And then later in my life, I was a paramedic in President Ford's motorcade when he visited down here. And then I worked with the media when I worked at the Sun Herald, worked with the media when Reagan came down here. Of course, I met Bush through the White House Advanced Team Opportunity. And then, of course, with President Bush, W. Bush, I get the chance to spend a lot of time with him after Hurricane Katrina, working closely with Haley Barbour. But all these Forrest Gump moments, the way I look at it, I don't know how you look at it, but that's just the way it is. Yeah. It's great to scrape, the edges of history and be able to see it with your own eyes. And I really appreciate you sharing that story. It's just an awesome story.
Well, thank you. It was a special moment, and it reminds me of a lot of other times we had together, but especially in these times, remembering the Queen and the great service she had for the UK.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, when we come back, we'll talk about cruising the coast. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We're visiting with my friend Craig C. Ray from Visit Mississippi. And I joked with him a little bit off the air that, I mentioned that for me, there were these Forrest Gump moments when I got to kind of scrape, near the president. But with Craig, it was his job, and he worked with both President Bushes. He was telling us during the break of once when they signed one of the treaties in Moscow with President Gorbachev. Craig was there. So I'm gonna bring him back. He should write a book. I'm gonna bring him back, and we're gonna talk about some of these other experiences because it's just a fascinating story. Sea Ray never ceases to amaze. That is for sure. So let's shift gears, Craig. Man, cruising the coast, it has become a really significant event for Mississippi, hasn't it?
It sure has. And I tell you, every state in the country, I serve on 3 national boards, every state would be jealous of owning a cruise on the coast in their state, of having a signature event, other than SEC football, which we have, SEC sports, but having a cruise on the coast for 25 years on the Mississippi Gulf Coast is so special. And Woody and his team have just done an unbelievable job of managing, promoting this event. We love being sponsors and helping them out with this, 100,000 people plus for a full week. Every hotel room sold out. Every state representative, I think 2 or 3 countries this year. I think this year already, Woody was telling me over 9,000 cars that have been signed up, along with 5 or 6 that don't sign up to still come down. It's an amazing event. We can sit here and talk about this all the time, but it's what a great event for the coast and for the state of Mississippi. I mean, all these vehicles that are coming into the state and people visiting the whole state. It's an amazing event.
Well, Craig, what's interesting in what you and I and Woody have talked about over the last couple of years is that what makes this one unique. You can go to other events and they're in single cities and they do a great job of hosting, and people who drive cars love that. But with the Beach Boulevard Drive here in coastal Mississippi and the 3 counties and the opportunity to showcase the way that they kind of showcase each of the cities that make up coastal Mississippi with these stops along the way from Bay St. Louis to Moss Point and all points in between. It's a unique event in that way. And the way they coordinate that, Craig, is just incredible.
It's truly, it has something for everybody. You have the auction areas where you can go buy a car if you like.
Yeah, my buddy Pete Vicari. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And if you're a sponsor, you have sponsor parties. If you're a VIP, they have VIP receptions. If you just out with your cooler and your lawn chair and sitting on the highway and watching cars cruising down the road. If you have your RV up in the park on the side, there's something for everybody to feel and touch. What's great about this event too is these people that bring in their cars, they're from all over the United States. They love coming to Mississippi. You can touch their cars. You can talk to them. They are the celebrities. They're bringing their vehicles to the coast. So it's not just 9,000 vehicles. There are 9,000 celebrities that own these old cars, these antiques, these cruisers. And it's just it's an amazing week of tourism and fun. The economic impact that comes to the coast and the good, the feel good vibe that it creates for Mississippi is incredible. Woody and his team have just done a wonderful job at this event.
So, Craig, I probably mentioned this to you, but after one of our live remotes at Town Green during cruising, I had Woody on, and my portion of the show was over. So Woody said, "You want to go for a walk?" I said, "Sure." So we went for a walk. And you talk about 9,000 celebrities. Everybody is really proud, and everyone's showing off their cars, and all the cars are so shiny and whatever. So Woody and I are walking along, and we'd take about 5 steps and we'd get stopped, and we'd take about 5 more steps and we'd get stopped. And one time it'd be somebody from California, another guy from Wisconsin, another guy from New York, another guy from literally. Woody was the celebrity.
Oh, he is.
Every single person knew Woody. It was amazing to me.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's been there for 25. This is year 26, and one of the founders of this concept and the event. And he has created a fun space for these owners. When you have these cars, as I've learned, you want to share your car. You want to show people your car. You want to go wherever it is, and having the number 1 and 2 car show in the United States, rated by USA Today during the last 5 years. It's amazing. And so people want to come there. They want to do it. And he is the godfather. I mean, he is
yes,
the man. And they've done, gosh,
it's a, the other thing, it's a great way to introduce Mississippi and your passion, the various trails we have all across the state of Mississippi. As you pointed out, the largest outdoor museum in the United States, and there's so much to talk about. But I mean, this once they come in, then they sort of get introduced to the rest of the state, and they'll come back. They'll come back in those cars and cruise through the Delta or do whatever they're going to do. But listen, we're out of time, my friend. It has been a pleasure. I love spending time with you. I loved hearing your Queen story. What a terrific visit this has been today.
Well, thank you, Ricky, for having me on the show. Always great to talk about the coast, and I love to share my presidential experiences as well. It's been fun, and looking forward to another great cruise on the coast this year.
For sure. Hey, it's been a pleasure. This has been Craig Ray from Visit Mississippi. We'll have him back, and we'll tell some more presidential stories. Talk to you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.